I named this image Watercross, and this is a 3-part editing series of how I created this image. The first being, how do you choose the right composition to edit? This one, simple ways to edit your photos on the iPhone. And the third one is what makes a great photograph. I'll be breaking down the image, talking about all the photographic rules I applied to it, and giving you some insight into why I took this picture. So you guys, we've picked our picture that we're going to edit. So let's bring it up in Snapseed, which is here. Open Snapseed, hit the plus. I'm going to go to here where it says Devices. Go to my favorites because that's where I know it is quickly. Here's our image. The first thing I like to do is I go through these presets. And the reason I do that is I found a lot of times I end up close to these as I'm working through the picture, and it saves me a bunch of steps. I like Accenture. You can see where it just adds a lot of saturation and contrast, so I'm going to start there. The next thing I like to do, go down here to Tools and tap Tools, Image Tune, and I'm going down to Ambiance. And the reason I like this is it lightens the shadows slightly, saturates the color slightly without wrecking the blacks. But it alters the image overall. And you can see on the top here, there's a slider. As I move through it, you can see the difference, what it does. So quite a different picture depending where you want to go. I'm going to add I'm going to lighten those shadows just a tiny bit. Go about 7%. So there we are. The next thing I want to do is work on the dock. So let's talk about this for a second. Everything in this picture is directing you towards the sun. The whole idea is to get the viewer to here, which is deeper in the picture. It creates three-dimensionality, depth, movement, uses leading lines. So I want to reinforce these ideas. So my idea is that I want my viewer to enter here and slide through the dock and end up in the back here. So I'm going to go to Tools, hit Brush. And here's Dodge and Burn. You see all these different brushes. I'm going to go 5% on it, zoom in slightly, and just bring my finger through here just a touch. If you turn on the eye icon, you'll see that it turns pink. You see that it turns pink. And so then I know, and I hit the check mark, and I've lightened it just slightly. The next step I want to do is, you see the waves in here. This side of the picture is darker than that side. So I like the contrast, the imbalance, and I'll explain that in the next video why I like that. But I'm going to just go in here, back to brushes, 5%. I'm going to zoom in. I'm just going to hit the tops of these waves just slightly. And all that's going to do is just brighten it up just a tiny bit. The waves create energy and movement within the picture, and I like that. It adds a very subtle amount of dynamic energy to the image, so that's why I do that. Next thing I want to do is these clouds. Everything is pushing, if you look at it visually, everything is driving us towards the back of the picture, but this is a little bit muddy up here. So I'm going to go to Brushes again. This time I'm going to Exposure, and I'm going to click it down to 3%. And I'm just going to come up. See, it's too much. You see how that was too much, so I'm going to hit my eye icon. I'm going to hit Erase and erase all that. Now I still want to use this tool, but I'm going to zoom in closer to it. And the idea is that I want to just hit these bright areas in here. And you notice how my motion is going towards the image. So all I've done is just going towards the center. All I've done is lighten those brights up just a tiny bit. And that helps bring your eye in towards the center again. So, all right, so now I'm looking at this. The other part of this picture that I want to work with is this area, which is this bright crescent of color. And that really adds more scale to the picture. But it's a little flat. So the first thing I'm going to do is go back to Brushes. I'm going to go to Saturation and go to 5% and zoom in slightly so I can have better control as I run through. I'm just going to go through and just saturate that color a tiny bit. The next thing, so I'm going to hit my check mark. I'm going to go back to Tools. I do these in all these individual steps, and I'll show you why in just a second when I show you the stack of the image alteration, and then you can individually go in and work on areas. Going to Dodge and Burn, I'm going to go to -5 this time because I want to darken it down just slightly, just a tiny bit through there. All right. Okay. One more thing I want to work on again is the dock. It's not quite not quite bright enough. I really do want this area to lead your eye into here. So I'm just going to bring it up a little more. Now look, see how much overbleed there was? So I'm going to go back to erase. And now I can go in and just clean up the edges of that just a little bit to make sure that overbleed doesn't give it this crazy sort of vignetting look, or or unfinished look to it. So there we go. Just going to clean that up a little bit in here. So only the dock is brightest. Now you see how much brighter that is now, and it brings you through it. It's not overdone, but it just accents it a tiny bit more. I still feel like this area is just a tiny bit dark over there, so I'm going to go back to my brushes. I'm going to try exposure this time and just see what happens when I bring that through. Yeah, you see, it kind of gets it, sort of washes it out a little bit, but it's really close. So I'm going to leave that where it is right now. Okay, you guys, so what I wanted to show you is another editing possibility. And actually, it's a way of working through your stacks. This feels a little muddy on top too, but here's what I'm going to do with that. Now, this is going to be a little crazy. We're going to jump into this a little deeper. I'm going to go back to Tools, back to my image tune, and I'm going to go to Contrast. And I like the contrast, just a little more contrast in the sky, not too much. Okay, look on the slider on top. And as I go right in there, see the difference? Just a little bit more contrast in that area of the sky. Not too much, but it was a little bit muddy. So we're going to hit OK on that. So now we're going to go to this, what's called View Edits. Do you see that? View Edits. And this gives me my whole stack of everything that was done. So there's the original. And there's our final. Quite a difference, isn't it? The original, look how flat and colorless that is. And look how much richer that is. So one of the things you can do is pick a tool, hit this area, and then down here at the bottom, you see it says 100%, 75, 50. So now I can go back in here, and I can just alter just those couple of areas. When I hit the check mark, only those areas will now have been changed. So back to the arrow. And there's our completed piece. So we're going to save that by hitting export and save as a copy. And now that will end up in your camera roll, and it's ready to share on social media or with your friends. Now, just a tip, if you're going to print these, I typically pull them onto my laptop, and I look at them more critically and make more fine-tuned adjustments. So you guys, the next video in the series, I'm going to actually break this down and discuss all the different aspects of the photographic rules I applied to it. If there's an image that you specifically would like me to talk about that's on my website or in my social media posts, send me a comment and I'd be happy to respond to it, and maybe I'll do a video on that as well. So remember, subscribe, like, and share. Thanks, guys.